Thank you for coming. You seem like a perfect fit. So like I didn't really do any like questions beforehand. I just wanted to go deeper on some of the things that you already told me. Um,
Yeah, pick out what you want to talk
so
about in
so
there.
uh, I want to hear about your dad pissing like Howard Hughes because Howard Hughes has always been like someone I've been fascinated by. Like people think that he was like this genius because he was so eccentric, but like he was pissing in jars and like was actually not even. He actually was not even uh, a good business person. He actually was like his business track record is horrible. But we glorify this guy because he was just rich and was just eccentric. But why was your dad? Was he a recluse? Why did he pee in jars when he
Oh,
was going around
okay. They
town?
were milk gallons, actually. That's a very important distinction. I guess it was to him. I didn't realize that until I was about 12. We were living in the attic of my grandparents' house in Azusa, and I lived in sort of an annexed closet, and then there was his room, and then there were these walk-in kind of closets, and they were full of gallons of pee. He was an alcoholic, and we lived in the attic. So I guess to not have to go down the stairs, he would pee in the gallons. But instead of taking them downstairs and dumping them out the next morning, he just saved them.
He was just lazy.
I don't know that lazy is the right word for it because he also saved all of the cans. And all the milk gallons there were probably like 24, 25 of them, just gallons of them. Some of them were older than others, like full of chunky pee. And
Chunky?
yeah,
Why would there be chunks in
I don't
pee?
know, like frothy and chunky, like kombucha SCOBY,
Ew.
like it had been there that long that it
It
turned.
like ferments.
Yeah. And he left them after we moved out too. So afterwards, I got a call from my aunt like months later saying that she went up to the attic to clean out the room, and she and one of our family relatives, and they had to dump out all the pee.
Your dad. Well, what kind of person was he?
Okay, so I grew up uh, a daddy's girl. I was my dad's big. I'm sorry. I'm like
No worries.
no. Uh, I loved my dad very, very much. He was, when they say like Disneyland dad, he was everything. He was fun and exciting and funny. He was always the one to play with us kids out in the yard. He took us places. We got to watch cool movies. Got to eat anything we wanted. And I lived with my grandparents, who were pretty uptight and strict. And so I used to go visit my dad after school, and I wanted to live with him. And I'm sorry, I'm telling this story horribly. I
No.
hope we're not live, right?
Yeah,
You're
we're
gonna,
live.
we're
But
live.
it doesn't matter how you tell the story. I'm gonna cut it, A, and B, just relax. There's no right or wrong. We're just having a conversation. You don't need to perform in any way. Like
Yeah.
this isn't.
Okay. Well. Okay. Can like meaning we're not live online, correct?
No,
No. Okay.
no,
Okay. No,
no,
I know
no,
that. I knew you were
no,
gonna cut there.
no.
Okay. So here's what I want to tell you about that. So
Yeah,
if we can start over, if that's
yeah.
possible. I was sexually abused by my dad. And so that's a huge thing. So like I've thought about that as far as like how much I want to talk about that and how
Okay.
much I don't want to talk about that. So like I started to get a little bit of anxiety.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So basically, I guess. Like, I don't think that my dad was looking for new and creative ways to traumatize me. I think he just found something that he was good at, and he stuck to it. I loved my dad. I wanted to go live with him. And I begged, actually. I begged to go live with him. I remember taking my little pink hamper with all my stuff and being like, yay! And we lived in a place with my grandparents. So I think that sort of like insulated the reality of the fact that he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. I didn't know that at the time. But they moved out. They bought a home, and we ended up getting our own apartment. And I would get home from school, and
Hey, you know what?
yeah.
I'm just now noticing that your mic is turned away from your face. Can we clip it on you so that it's turned towards your face? So you know,
Is that good?
that's better.
Okay.
Great. Anyway, you were a daddy's girl.
Oh yeah, and so I mean, his favorite color is green, my favorite color is green. His favorite band, my favorite band. I remember being in elementary school, and they had a writing assignment. What's the most important thing to you in your life? And mine was, it's my dad. If it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be here. I guess because my mom was absent, he had this like extra importance to me. And so there was a lot of cognitive dissonance at first. I didn't really know what was going on. I thought we were just poor, to be honest. A lot of times I'd get home, there wouldn't be any food. We didn't have utilities. And so there wouldn't be hot water. We wouldn't have electricity. And I didn't quite understand where all of the money was going. He would send me to my aunts and uncles' houses to borrow money. We would go to this place in East LA and park outside. I later realized that was his crack dealer. But yeah, he used to tell me, I'm just going in to borrow money. And he would lean my chair back in the car, and he'd turn on the radio, but he'd take out the keys so that, I guess someone could run off with the car. But he turned the ignition on so I could listen to the radio and have my seat leaned back and just be waiting and waiting and waiting for him to come back out. But he had a pretty severe drug and alcohol problem.
How old were you when he was doing this?
I was 9 when I moved in with him, so 9 all the way up until I moved out.
At what age?
17.
Yeah.
So we're living together. He can't pay rent at the apartment that we are staying in, and so we get kicked out. We go to live at my grandparents' place, and that's when we have our little attic. I'm staying in the corner closet. He has these like double wide closets full of the piss gallons, and he just stumble around like half naked, pissing in the bottles. One time I accidentally drank one.
No!
I really did. It was in a fucking Snapple iced tea bottle. So it's like camouflage. It's like, how intentional can you fucking be about it? But it was just out on the counter, and I unknowingly just picked it up. 11? Yeah.
You say I was 11 just because we were going to cut.
Oh yeah, I was 11. Yeah. And that's when it started to get really real to me. And I went through his drawers, and I found, his gear and a bunch of little wrappers. Just like he saved everything. So he saved the bottles from all the alcohol. It was like pints of Smirnoff, Mickey's, 40s of King Cobra, whatever, just trash bags and trash bags out on the little service porch area. And then all the gallons of pee. And then I opened the drawer, and I found all his gear, all the little wrappers. And then it made sense. Oh, that's why we go to that house in East. They put all the pieces together. And when he came home, I confronted him, and I told him that I was going to leave and I was going to go back to live with my grandparents. He got down on his hands and knees, and he begged me, he cried. And he's like, I'll kill myself if you go. Please don't leave. You're all I have. And so I ended up staying. That was his thing. He also, it's interesting, because he ended up, I don't think this has anything to do with the piss, but he ended up getting this really rare disease where he would swell up. Like he'd swell up on his face, or swell up on his.
What was it called?
I don't know. He ended up getting an EpiPen for it. Like I don't, but yeah, there was this period in time where he would just get these random swellings in his face and in his body, which is like pretty crazy. But yeah, that was.
But he was abusing you this whole time too.
He was giving me alcohol, actually. So around the time that I realized that he was an alcoholic, and I knew that he was drinking. Obviously, we would go to the liquor store every day after school. We'd go to different liquor stores. To preserve his good image, we go to different liquor stores to make sure they didn't know. And
he was just buying so much.
Yeah, and he would come in with me. So eventually, I confronted him in my little girl way. I said, if you are going to keep drinking, I want to drink too. Yeah, I was like, if it's that great, that he's spending all of our rent money, we don't have utilities, like drinking must.
What age again?
11 actually. And so we would go to the liquor store, and I would like inconspicuously point to what I wanted, or like whisper to him, get me a little this thing is a Jack's hard liquor or whatever. And so we go home together and drink together. I get drunk with my dad, and there was one time that we went to San Francisco. It was me and him and my godfather, and we got a little hotel room, and they had a cooler full of beer, and they kept letting me get more and more beer. I got really drunk, and I was having such a great time. I was like falling on the floor and laughing, and then I blacked out. My godfather was gone, and I woke up, and I don't have many memories of that, so I wasn't quite sure what had happened. And then I moved away from home when I was 19. I moved away from Los Angeles, I should say, when I was 19. I moved to Austin, and then I started having these really, really bad nightmares. Like every single night, I would wake up screaming, having these flashbacks of him raping me. And I'd heard a lot about false memory syndrome and stuff like that. And like I said, I was such a daddy's girl. I didn't want to believe that about him, even though there were a lot of feelings that preceded that. You know, they talk about emotional incest and how that can be equally as damaging.
What is that?
That's when you're parentalized by a parent in a way where they overconfide in you. They treat you like the spouse that may have abandoned them. It
seems like what was going on when he gets on his hands and knees and pleads with you to stay. Like it's almost.
And he's drinking.
Like you're his girlfriend.
And that's what I told him. Yeah. You know, one time he took me to a work function. I must have been 9 at this time, and somebody mistook me because I was a pretty developed at that age. I think I had boobs when I was 9. I wore 8.5 size shoe at 11, and then I stopped growing. But I was mistaken for his girlfriend by a colleague at a work function, and he told me with this like glee in his voice. I remember being really disturbed by that and telling him over and over again, "I'm not your wife." And I look a lot like my mother, so there may be some of that. And then also, this is a good one.
Wait. So how did? Well, not to interrupt. Sound like you're gonna get.
No.
How did him and his mom how did that relate?
My mom. They split up before I have any sort of memory. So it was probably 1 or 2. My mom says she doesn't remember anything about my birth, me being a baby, my childhood. She's just I don't remember anything. But she says she just didn't believe the things that my dad would say, and that she didn't feel.
What was the relationship like when you were like young?
Between them?
Yeah.
Non-existent. I used to always want them to get back together. I remember just fantasizing about that. And I remember one time we went to the movies together. We saw that Robert Downey Jr. movie, Heart and Soul. I don't know if you remember that. But that was the one time I remember going out with them together. But my mom left my dad for another guy. She was cheating on him, apparently, when I was like a small baby.
Your dad was brokenhearted and was kind of still
crushed, absolutely crushed, and he hated my mother. He used to always talk badly about her. Like, this is so stupid, but my name is Samantha. I was named after the show Bewitched because it's my mother's favorite show. So my dad would sing like, "Be bitched, your mother's be bitched, you know, your mother's a whore, your mother," just like, you know, any little dig that he could make at my mom. My mom, born year in the monkey, you know, Chinese horoscope. Oh, yeah, she was a monkey in bed, like things like that. And then he would always say talk about really graphically sexual things in front of me. Him and his friends were perverts too. Like my godfather, for instance. I told you that I went to San Francisco with him. Okay, he found me when I was like 20 years old, and he told me that he had been in love with me since I was 13, and that he went to a priest and told him, and he's like, "Well, if she's of age now, I mean, might as well look her up." He's like, "I got the consent of a priest. He said it's fine." So, you know, yeah, so it was always pretty young. The vibes were always pretty strong, and really, he was really possessive, you know.
So wait, how often would you see your mother, though?
I didn't see her.
Never.
Every so often, I didn't live with her. She'd be gone for months.
How often in a year would you see your mom?
For holidays. I'd see her for holidays, and
You say I'd only see my mom a couple times a year.
I'd only see my mom a couple times a year for holidays, and if I was at my grandma's house, then she'd show up.
Yeah.
She was in this super abusive relationship with this tweaker and was living in a trailer, and I used to beat the shit out of her. But she kind of turned her life around, actually. She ended up having a son who was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, my brother from another father. And after that, she left Craig, and we used to call him Tales from the Crypt because he was bald on top with like the scraggly hairs on the bottom. Yeah, I hated him so much. I call him Tales from the Crypt. I call him Pink Man because he was one of those because he was one of those white guys who'd like be out in the sun for a second, he'd turn completely pink. So we call him Pink Man. And I remember trying to spell idiot and being like, he's an EDEOT. He's an idiot. I hate him. But I remember that. But she was with him for a really long time, and then my brother was born, and he's 22 now, but he's mentally sort of plateaued at the age of maybe a 1-year-old, actually, because he can't feed himself. He wears diapers.
Thing that did it?
Yeah. Oxygen didn't get to his brain, really? So he had occupational therapy. He had occupational therapy, music therapy. My mom was constantly going to IEPs trying to get him services and having to fight for him to get more services because they wouldn't see any sort of development.
That's extremely disabled. He said he's still like basically, so he can't speak?
No, he cannot speak, and he can't even communicate. Like, there's no sign language. There's no. He chronically masturbates though, so that's a really hard one too.
Wait. Does he have the wherewithal to know not to do it in public?
No. It's a constant battle with my mom. He's doing his wild thing again.
His wild thing.
And then sometimes, she tries to adjust to it in all kinds of ways. Because, they go home and she puts him in the room and she'll, hear his noises. And I guess after she finishes, she'll be like, yay, good job. I don't know how you manage those things.
So wait,
difficult.
Will he just put his hand down his pants, or will he take his dick out of his pants?
Oh yeah, and she puts a pillow over him because when they're driving or wherever they're.
Does he spit in his hand?
No, he just goes in dry. Yeah.
Just goes in dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you seen him do this in a public place? Does he not leave? Does he not go in public?
I haven't not seen him do it in a public place. It's just constant. It is the one. And then she, because doctors say, oh, we could give him medication. But she's like, why are you going to take away he likes to eat. He likes to do his wild thing. Why are you going to take that away from him? Just leave him alone. I guess something that would control erection. I'm thinking, yeah.
Jesus Christ. He's so disabled that it's almost like being a vegetable,
That's, I try not to use that word, but that is, vegetable is actually the word that I think of a lot.
Yeah.
Because he's there, but he's not there. He doesn't even really look at you. He's kind of off in his own world. Yeah. And we have a swing in our yard. My grandpa put it up when I was a kid, but it's one of the ones you put kids in with the holes for the feet, but it's hanging by one strap, and he just spins it. He just spins it around over, I guess they call it stimming or whatever, but he just spins the swing, the yard until he's ready to run towards the gate and take his dick out. And literally, that's what he does. I'm not trying to be funny. He just runs towards the gate, takes his dick out, and my mom's like, oh God, before the neighbors see, gotta go, bye, see you tomorrow.
Do you remember any specifically embarrassing times of him masturbating in public?
No, that's more of a new thing. Actually, my mom and I see each other now. This is this is a little backstory, I guess. But yeah, no, that is him now in his 20s. This is the last 10 years or so, not as a kid.
So you only see him when you see your mom, which isn't.
Now I see my mother every single day.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I don't know about that. I wouldn't say that it's great. But I would say that is the fact. The fact is that I see her every day. I live with my grandmother. My marriage dissolved, and so my son and I moved in with my grandma, and my mom visits the house daily. So I see her now. Yeah. We have a really strained relationship. We pretty much just coexist. We do the hey, but we don't really talk. I have infinite.
Sure.
I have a lot of resentment for her because she judges who I am now pretty harshly, and I don't really think that she has the right to.
No.
You know, and she had her chance to have an input, and
Yeah.
and so you know, and then also, I mean, then this isn't really a kind thing to say, but just because you're a caretaker of somebody who's disabled doesn't necessarily make you a saint. And I think that that is also something, although she lives a life that I have infinite respect for, and I can't even imagine how difficult it must be, and I have so much empathy that it holds me back a lot from.
You seem like it, and I think you're too kind to your parents. I think they were really cruel to you. Maybe I don't have the right to say that. I don't really know the details that much, but hearing you describe your dad initially, you only use the most positive adjectives to describe this horrible person that ruined your life in a lot of ways. And your mom is the same.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. My ex-boyfriend used to say that I had something of Stockholm Syndrome.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to deal with because you realize that people are a lot more nuanced than just monsters. And I think that what hurts most is not when I remember him abusing me, or the things that I was exposed to that I shouldn't have been exposed to, or any of the, I think the most painful things are the sweet things, and trying to reconcile the very potent reality of some of my more innocent or benign childhood memories with some of the most like terrible.
Yeah.
And to think that that could be the same person,
Yeah.
you know, and also, you know, the idea of breaking the cycle is like really important to me because we're a multi-generational incest family. No, it's three generations of child abuse. His father molested my aunts, and his father molested his aunts, and who knows how far back that goes.
That it's breaking the cycle. Like, do you think that creates new abusers?
No.
Seeing
Well,
your father, someone who you try to emulate.
I think that what do they say, that the majority of people who sexually abuse children were abused themselves as children, but most people who are sexually abused as children don't go on to abuse.
Right.
And so I think
maybe he was sexually abused, but it also seems like he may have just witnessed his father abusing.
That's my that was my speculation too. My aunt Yvette is the only person to really speak out about that in our family, and she says that he used to sleep in the service porch connected to my aunt's bedroom, so my grandfather would have to walk through his bedroom every night to get to my aunt's.
I'll say, like, incest is a topic we haven't covered, and it's such like a big one, and it's such an under discussed thing. Child abuse is such a touchy subject that, like, when people would have stories of child abuse, and it's so prevalent that it's happened several times, I usually don't really want to talk about it because either they're telling it in a way that's funny and it's really not funny, or it's just so triggering for a lot of people that it's almost too much. I mean, like, you would think that the page, it's so wild, like there's no limits to what we do, but that's just the one area, that and bestiality, both of which have come up like many times. Those are things that I'm just a little bit, they're too serious to me. But your story, I love it, and I love your perspective on it, because I feel like you acknowledge how terrible it was, but I think you paint a really good picture of your father as like this really troubled person. I'm interested in his relationships with women after.
He had no relationships with women while I was growing up. We never saw him with women at all.
So he never had another girlfriend after your mom?
Until I moved to Texas. Okay, here's where the story kind of comes full circle. I moved to Texas, I start having my flashbacks, but I'm doubting myself, and then I feel guilty as fuck because I think, oh God, am I the person who's making up this story against my dad, who, yeah, maybe a troubled alcoholic drug addict, but certainly not a child molester. And yeah, I felt weird things, but maybe that's all in my head. Okay, so he gets a girlfriend who's a year older than me. And that's strange, but she's also, I want to say dumb as bricks, but that's not kind. She's just very basic compared to my dad, who was...
Does she look like you?
No, she was quite overweight. She had 2 daughters.
Okay.
And she was not smart. I mean, my dad, for all the things I have to say, he's a very intelligent, witty, knew a little bit about everything, great to have a conversation with. And she was just, I don't know, just a basic person. So it didn't quite make sense what it was that he was attracted to about her.
Maybe I don't know, he never went for any women ever.
Okay, so
maybe this was just the one person he felt comfortable with.
So he starts playing in this little cover band where they do
band?
Yeah, it's oh god, I don't want to just name drop the band. But
it's not, no, I'm not saying what is.
What would they cover? Oh god, no, but
they
they would cover like Led Zeppelin, like dad rock, a dad rock band doing dad rock covers and stuff. He sang, and he.
Does he have long hair?
No, he doesn't. He's balding and overweight and always wears a baseball cap and little khaki shorts. And
where would they play?
All over, all around. No, they would play throughout LA, like 2nd Street Jazz Club, Kegs in Redondo Beach. They were just playing all over. And she went to one of his shows. And was like, hey, cute. I like the way you sing Billy Idol. And they start dating, move in really quickly. He starts taking care of the girls a lot. And
do you think he's molesting those girls?
Oh, I don't think he was charged with molesting. So that's when I got the confirmation that it wasn't just in my head.
Let's pause. We got a helicopter. You also told me that you had an ex who was busted for child porn.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about
a lot of pedophiles.
And they say that people, it's called TIV. We'll talk about this after, but tendency for interpersonal victimhood. So there are certain.
Wait. I want to get this. So let's. Your story already is fantastic, and we're not going to get it all today because it's already. I can tell there's so many different things I need to hear more about.
I really the one story that if and it doesn't have to be today, but the one story that is pressingly important to tell for me is the story of how my best friend passed away. Okay. But we will talk about let's stay on topic. Yes. Yeah.
What's TIV?
Okay, so TIV is tendency for interpersonal victimhood. So it is there's certain people who tend to be victimized more than others, and people who have been victimized in their early lives tend to be re-victimized. If you're raped, you have a higher likelihood of being raped and raped again. But that definitely led to, unconsciously, me choosing people along that spectrum. Enter the party line where I met those pedophiles. Enter the dude that I met who was busted with child porn.
What do you think it was about this guy that attracted you?
I was 17. My friend and I had a little screamy girl band, and we went to this art gallery in Highland Park. It was Charlie Chaplin's old production studio. And there's called the Space Art Gallery, a bunch of dudes living together, putting on shows, and our band. We wanted them to book our band. And he was there. I don't remember meeting him the first time because I was completely blackout drunk. But apparently I sat on his lap and I fed him chocolate cake. I sat on his lap, I was feeding him chocolate cake with my hands. I had a shaved head at the time, I was wearing wigs. And I went home and she's like, oh, who's that guy that you were talking to? I was like, what guy? She's like, the guy that you were feeding cake. She's like, I was feeding somebody cake. She's like, yeah, you were super into me. She thought that I was lying. I was like, I really don't remember any of that. So when we went back to play the gig, there he was. He showed me around, showed me all the paintings, showed me his room. He was he just gotten back from Spain. He went to art center. He was a pretty incredible artist, and he was very sprightly, you know, like I guess almost even on the face side, you know, a little bit like, oh, you know, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and like hopping around like Peter Pan, and we just became a thing immediately. You know, I was 17, he was 27, so we started like, okay, a phoebophile vibes, but you know, like, you know, a teenager is a lot different than a kid. So we started dating. We date for 2.5 years. He was my first.
I guess that's a red flag of him being 27
and me being 17. Yeah. I know. I thought, but I was so precocious. You don't understand. But yeah, we're together for 2.5 years, and it was a big relationship for me. He had a really crappy little motorcycle. It was like a BMW motorcycle, and he would have to like pop start it, and rented a motorcycle, and we drove up to Big Sur for our anniversary. He's the first guy to ever make me come. He used to give me baths, a little creepy. Like me to stay real shaved, clean, and like, I mean, really, no, that's genuine. I remember him making like a comment one time. I was talking about the part of the book Lolita where Humbert says he would love to have a bunch of little Lolitas, like basically when Lolita ages out of being like, you know, luscious, that he'll just make her have a bunch of babies that he can then sexually abuse. And I mentioned that, and he was like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Yeah, right? So it's just red flags, but I'm like, I love this guy.
Like, even as a joke, like, for your mind to go there, like...
Yeah, of all the possibilities, that's your first thought, right? That's, yeah.
If anyone says that's a joke, you should be...
A little bit concerned, yeah. I didn't have that wisdom then. So, okay, flash forward to, so he's the first guy to make me come. Like, I'm super in love with him. Like, we would do it all the time. That's the creepy part, is he's probably the boyfriend that I had the most sex with. Let's try not to think that too hard about that. But like, I mean, a lot. And so I kind of like, I had lost my virginity young, but I came of age with this guy. Like, I really felt like, you know, I started to explore my sexuality in what I thought was like a healthy way with him. Like, I took mushrooms for the first time. You know, I used to pose for figure drawing, modeling, and stuff like that. And so it was a really, it was an experience that was really exciting for me in a lot of ways. Like, I felt like I was growing so much as an artist and as a person. I was hyped to be there. There was always events. And then one day, I get this phone call. I'm at home, and his friend is like, Sam, oh, fuck, dude, I'm so sorry. Actually, what happens is he shows up at my house, and he's like, Sam, something happened. Something really bad happened. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, fuck it. Ulysses is just being really self-righteous. Like, he thinks he can judge people, and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on?
Hang on a second. I need to take care of these dogs.
Yeah.
All right. What were we talking about?
So how did I find out he was a pedophile?
All right, okay.
I'm at my house. He shows up. He's flustered. He's stammering. Ulysses, his roommate. Ulysses is such a hypocrite. He thinks he can judge people. I said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? He goes, well, you know, he's on my computer.
Oh, wait, sorry. Can you clap again? Just up high near your face. Okay, cool. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
Just keep going.
Okay. So, he thinks he can judge people. So what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, he found something on my computer. And I said, well, what are you talking? And my blood ran cold. Like, I don't know how to, I felt like my heart stopped because I already knew. Like, I didn't know he was a pedophile, but I knew it was something bad just from the way that he was acting. He said, it was just young girls, just young girls. I said, well, how young? And he's like, 16, 17, like you, just young girls, whatever, And I said, get out. What do you mean, get out? The waterworks. Go. So I call his friend Ulysses. Ulysses is at a bar, and he's crying. He and Ulysses have known each other since high school, and they'd planned to open a preschool together. Like, I know that Ulysses
Dude,
was.
this guy was a serious pedophile. Cause like,
Yeah, let's
what
open a
man
preschool.
decides to open a preschool?
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah,
pedophile.
exactly.
By the
Yeah.
way, I forgot to clip this on again.
Oh. Yeah,
New to
right?
this, the first one.
So I call up Ulysses. He's drinking at a bar. And I said, what happened? I guess because they would throw shows. He's on Miguel's computer. He goes to save a file, and the file saves into the last file, like the previously saved file folder or whatever. And there's just a bunch of child pornography. And I asked him how young the girls were, and he just, there were no pubic hair, no breasts. He's like 5, 6, 7 years old. Yeah, and they didn't turn him in. They were afraid that he would get killed, and so they kicked him out of the art gallery and shunned him from the Northeast Los Angeles, arts community, because he was like a big part of the arts walks and the galleries and stuff. And so they basically just told him, get the fuck out of here, take your shit. But he dated one of the teenage girls from the community. He even took her to prom after that. Yeah.
Well, you guys broke up after.
After that, yeah. He was actually dating her behind my back while we were together, but then after we broke up, she was 16, so I was 17, she was 16. And her mom was cool with it too. He used to stay the night at her house and everything, so that's a whole other thing. She and I became friends afterwards. That was kind of cool.
Did she eventually come to like a realization about him?
Yeah, she did. She did. I think that she knew too because everyone knew. Everybody knew, but it was one of those things that but I think that you can know but not accept on an emotional level, especially when you're young like that. Like even I saw him after that when he'd moved to this new place in Altadena. He was staying with these people that he met off of Craigslist. He picked me up. It was raining. And I remember being really, really sad and just not being able to believe it. I'm ashamed to even admit that now, 33-year-old Samantha, just like fucking want to see that guy on fire somewhere. But I was heartbroken and I couldn't reconcile, again, the person that I'd fallen in love with, the person that I cared for so deeply that I had all those special memories with.
Right. Well, you said before people aren't black and white.
No.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, I say people aren't black and white, and yet I'm about to say something binary where, I mean, abusers are more likely than not, people who abuse have been abused more often than not. They come from abusive backgrounds, and so I don't want to make this binary statement and be like, you can either, be abused and become an abuser, or become a victim, or whatever. Then I guess they, in between those two pendulum swings, there is like an integrated and emotionally healthy person who is neither victim or abuser, but who is, like an effective and actualized human being. That is working on it. But we even I think that the dyad, it switches up a lot between victim and abuser too, where being with people who are abusive, you can absolutely adapt to the abuse and start to exist on those terms, I think.
You don't remember any of the abuse from your father. You would repress those memories, but they came back to you later.
Right.
Yeah. But he abused you in other ways too. Like that, the way he gave you alcohol was abuse.
Oh, absolutely. And I think about that too because I was I was in gifted and talented programs, and I really loved school and I loved learning, but I dropped out in the 9th grade. And I was really fucked up on drugs for a long time. So yeah, I felt like he stole my childhood, and I felt like he definitely stole my innocence and my ability to trust people. But then, it's one of those mixed blessings type things because I was given something bigger instead. Like I may have lost my innocence, but I may have gained some sort of a wisdom or insight or like a privy view into, I don't know, some sort of dark side of humanity that allows me to have an amount of empathy. Like I don't like the idea that you have to go through shit to be able to have anything good or to be able to appreciate things. Or I don't really like the idea of that exchange, but it has seemed to happen that way, that in the wake of the devastation of things like that, like what happened with my dad or that guy Miguel, there was a lag. There was a huge lag between the benefit that I reaped from going through the abuse, and I mean it was fucking horrible chaos and a lot of grieving between, you know, receiving whatever blessings come from being traumatized. But I think those are the things that you have to mine, you know, like people say stuff like pressure makes diamonds, and pressure can also make you crumble. And
yeah, it does make diamonds, but that's the 5%. 95% of people who are abused or have fucked up childhoods, it ruins their lives. And it would have been way better off without it. Some people, yeah, it does turn them into a dime, does fuel them or do something, make them more interesting, make them adapt in a positive way. But that's really rare, and like, I don't know, you shouldn't expect that of people.
No, absolutely not. You know, I never understood the phrase, there but for the grace of God go I. Like I always misunderstood that. I think I put the emphasis on the wrong word or something, because when I heard it in my head, it didn't mean what it's supposed to mean. It means like when you see somebody who's less fortunate than you, right? You say there but for the grace of God. If I had been born in those circumstances, I might be just like that person. I might not have any, we can look and say, oh, where's the agency in that person? But I mean, have you heard of the idea of learned helplessness? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like that. The idea of learned helplessness, that these animals that are put in, well, should I explain the test?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. So the idea of learned helplessness comes from this experiment that they did with dogs, where they put them on tiles that were electrocuted, and the ones where they were able to figure out some rhyme or reason to how the tiles were electrocuted were able to free themselves from the trap. But those that were given tiles that were sort of that were how would you say, like.
Well, I know it was a dogs. I didn't know like the exact, so I don't know.
The dogs that weren't able to, the dogs that weren't able to predict where the shocks were going to come from, and that couldn't figure out where the shocks were coming from, they couldn't avoid it, stopped trying altogether. And even when they were able to escape, the men who were conducting the test had to physically pick up the dogs and move their legs to show them how to do it over and over before they were actually able to do it of their own initiative. And so I think a lot of times, like when you grow up in these environments, you may have, you know, the gumption somewhere inside of you, but that learned helplessness is just so pervasive that it's really hard to get out of.
Horrible. And then your dad, how did he spend his time? Like just drinking,
watching TV. You just zone out watching TV, pass out in front of the television.
It's so toxic, and it breeds just like, honestly, the image of your father I have is just the really disgusting person. Peeing in bottles, a child molester, you know, and a recluse. He was a kind of a recluse, right? He would just do drugs and watch TV all day.
Yeah, he had a really incredible record collection for a little while, at least, before we had to put everything in storage. And then obviously he couldn't pay for the storage unit, and it all got auctioned off. But we used to have a pretty incredible record collection. He had the original Leonard Skinner album with Fire in the background, you know, before the airplane tragedy. And
that band, I guess that was kind of
the band was so, I think the band was even worse than the child molesting. Like it was. Fuck. Who wants to hear fucking if you could only see the, or fucking rebel yell from a dude who like raped his own daughter? Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
And you play at like beach bars and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. A little.
Who were his friends?
So you had my godfather, who was he was a man who made up his own mythology. Like he called himself the Grek because he was into like Greek and Roman history, and he was a big movie nerd who lived with his mom and would like run up her credit cards buying like a replica of James Bond's Rolex, or he loved the movie Quadrophenia, so he spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars converting a Vespa to look exactly like Sting's character, Ace Face's Vespa in Quadrophenia, which I don't know if you've seen that, but it has like 800 mirrors on it. And he spent all this money souping up the Vespa, and it was like too much of a fucking drunken asshole to even ride it. Like it sat in his garage for a little bit. He rode it once, he wrecked it, and then he sold it. So that was that was one of his friends.
You said that he was like a charismatic guy. Like he was great to talk to. He was well read. He's smart.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is another thing that my ex-boyfriend used to get really upset with me about. Is to tell him, well, I got my love of music from my dad. I got my love of art from my dad. My dad was the one person who didn't censor me. He allowed me to be who I was. He encouraged my art. He encouraged me playing music. He encouraged my creativity and my thinking and existing outside of the box. Oh, you know what's memory. One time he rented the movie The Ballad of Jack and Rose, which is a movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Camilla blah blah blah. But it's about a dad who has sex with his daughter, but it's not just about having sex with his daughter. They kind of like love each other, and they live in this little house away from everybody, and it's just
it's hard for you to talk about the abuse, but I do have some questions which you don't have to answer.
Yeah.
But like it seemed like he like was in love with you. Would you say that?
That's really how it felt. And even it's interesting because I didn't see him.
Can you just repeat what I said?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I absolutely felt that. Let's see. Yeah, it did seem like he was in love with me. He would just gaze at me. There was this feeling of possessiveness. Like I said,
but other than like rape, would he like kiss you on the lips?
He would take pictures of me. Yeah. And it was, but the opposite is actually true. No, he would not kiss me on the lips. It was almost like he was afraid to touch me. Like he would kind of stiffen up when I would hug him, and I remember him wanting to always take these. Sounds so funny because I would say these really artsy pictures. But yeah, he would want to take these really artsy type pictures of me. So he would have me, put on like pretty dresses, and then I remember one time we had this glass table, and I like laid under the glass table with flowers, and he took a bunch of pictures. And I remember one Halloween, I dressed up as Betty Page, and he was very into that, and he took a lot of pictures before I went out.
Any other like ways that he was creepy with? It's weird that he would stiffen up, like he was like nervous or something.
Yeah, and even he would sometimes get really flustered around me, like really. I don't know how you would say, like a little boy on a date or something, like very goofy. I remember when I moved to Texas, like I said, I was still trying to reconcile what had happened, whether it actually happened. And he would write me these letters, and they were just very like, oh, you're the best letter writer in the whole world. And I mean, I know that sounds kind of generic, but it was just it didn't feel like a dad writing to his like daughter. It felt like somebody yearning. And then when I left for Austin, he fell apart. It wasn't like, oh, my daughter grew up and she's moving to a new state, and I'm so proud of her and I'm excited for her new journey. He crumpled when I left. He fell into a really deep depression. He was not happy that I was going. And he told me over and over again how he felt like he had nothing without me there. That was his life. So I definitely, he was dependent on me so much. The idea of being a parentalized child is like very acute for me because I took care of him. He didn't take care of me. I took care of him. I was always trying to make him feel better. He would come to me to vent about his problems, tell me about his day. I'd be there to help him figure things out. I was going to just try and make the best of the situation. It doesn't matter if we don't have electricity, who cares? It doesn't matter if we don't have hot water. It doesn't matter if we don't have food. I like this. I like eating top ramen raw. It's good that way.
Where is he now?
He is, last I heard, he was in a halfway home. He had attempted suicide. He's still in contact with his side of the family, so I don't have anything to do really with my paternal side of the family. I talked to one of my aunts and my cousin a little bit. He's pretty busy, but I don't keep in contact with that side of the family because they, even with my grandfather, everyone knows that my grandfather molested my aunts, but up until the day he died, he was revered in the family. He would sit at the head of the table. Even after he died, they would bring out my grandma and my grandpa's things and put them on the table and memoriam, oh, and dad and mom are with us for this Thanksgiving. I remember the hypocrisy of it just didn't sit well with me. I didn't know how we could protect abusers and pretend like nothing had ever happened. And it was the same thing with me where he stayed in contact with everyone. He continued to go to Christmas dinner and Easter and birthdays and stuff. And I'm the one who fell out of the family. But I did get a call about a year ago that he hadn't paid rent. And I think that his landlord had my uncle or one of my aunt's phone numbers. So they called, and my aunts and uncles showed up en masse, and they knocked on his door. And it was almost like a cops thing where he answered, but then he darted to the back of the room, and he slashed his wrists. The lights were out. I think it was for show. I think it was like a desperate, I'm the victim, give me help kind of thing. I mean, that's maybe unfair to say. That might be very unfair to say. He might be suffering from extreme amounts of guilt and misery and his own addiction and trauma and stuff. So I don't want to minimize that. But
the way he lived his life, it's just he must just be deeply tortured and sad.
He still tries to send me, I live with my grandma. We had a landline up until last year, which we got rid of because we'd constantly get calls from telemarketers, and my grandma falls for every single one. It's Mom, please don't, But we finally had to cut off the phone. But he would call. He would keep calling. At first, the first time I screamed at him, loud enough for the entire neighborhood. I know what the fuck you did to me. Leave me the fuck alone, right?
How did you first confront him with that?
I didn't really. I didn't confront him about it. I just dropped off. I didn't, they say that if somebody is sick enough to abuse you, they're sick enough to deny it. So I don't really need validation from the person who did it to me. He did tell me what happened with the girls, but, he tried to act like they were lying. He it's so funny. He got the American Cancer Society to write him a note to bring to court. I remember him saying that he because his band, his little dad band had done cancer benefits. So he tried to get people to put in letters for him. He would never abuse a child. He fucking donates blood for the Red Cross. So he's a good guy. But what were we talking about?
I just how did you first confront him with the info?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't until he called, until he wouldn't stop calling me. And then I said, I know what you did to me. Yeah. Leave me the fuck alone.
So you've never seen him in person since then?
No. And
can you say I have never seen him in person since then?
I saw him in person. I saw him in person when my son was about 2 years old. And that was a pretty interesting situation. Although there's so much story attached to that I'm not really sure if you want to get into all of that.
It's all interesting to me.
Okay, so I was going through a really, really hard time with my own drinking. I've struggled a lot with my alcoholism. So much. And that's one of the things that I think has been like the hardest for me to forgive him for, is because it's been hard. It's been really, really hard to quit. I've wanted to for over a decade. And so things were really bad for me. And he called the house. And I talked to him. I talked to him about my drinking. And this was before I had found out about the girls. This is how I found out about the girls, actually. I was still mixed up in my head. And I told him, like if anyone's going to understand the drinking problem, it's you. So I met up with him, and he proceeded to try and get me really fucking drunk. Like, he poured me a huge glass of vodka out of his refrigerator. He was living in Highland Park. He was living not far from me. His house was pretty empty, pretty bare bones. He had like a couple guitars and stuff, but just fucking booze in the freezer, no food, no anything. And he served me a big fucking glass of vodka with like barely any soda water in it. And immediately I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to get me wasted. So I called my ex-husband, of all people. Like, I hadn't talked to him in forever, but I asked him to come pick me up because I was scared. But yeah, he told me about the girls. He said that I guess they were celebrating his story. They were celebrating the oldest girl's quinceañera, and that she had wanted to, something with boys or something. Like, she had wanted some sort of a privilege. She'd wanted some sort of a privilege and got mad at him, supposedly, and made up a story. That was his thing, was that it was her quinceañera. She had wanted some sort of privilege. She asked him for that. He said no, and she was so upset by the fact that he denied her request that she went and told her mom that he'd sexually abused her to ruin him, right? I reached out to his ex-girlfriend on Instagram, and we talked about it. The girls are doing better now, but they're in therapy as well. Right. And she validated it. And there was, I remember too, seeing the girls sitting on his lap. You know, they're not his daughters.
He needs to go to jail.
Yeah, he does. You know, it's interesting too, when the oldest daughter, her father, it's a little convoluted. Her father was put in jail for statutory rape because her mother, my dad's girlfriend, was 16 when she got pregnant. So when the young daughter's dad, actual physical father, got out of jail, my dad was so jealous. He's like, that guy's a pedophile. He can't be around you. Can you believe the hypocrisy of that? That guy's a pedophile. He's a child molester. He should never beat you.
When people, I mean,
you're my sweet little morsel.
It's his way of pretending, like.
Yeah. He was a softball coach before I was born. I remember him telling me how like exhilarating it was to have the girls dump the Gatorade on you. Like, I'm sure it was.
Wow. I still can't get over your ex-boyfriend saying he wanted to open a preschool.
Yeah, because they were kind of like, they were like food not bombs, like anarchist type, like, you know, donating money to the Zapatistas, like teaching women how to speak English for free. They were very like, you know, in their ideals, and so they wanted to start up a little alternative preschool. My friend Ulysses is a really great guy, like a genuinely great guy, not like a great guy. But that was their goal. They wanted to open up a little preschool together, and that's why Ulysses was devastated because, you know, oh man, how close I came to opening a preschool with this fucking pedophile.
I mean, I don't think men should be allowed to open preschools.
New rule.
I mean, seriously, why do that?
Yeah.
So you said, here's one that you told me in your text message. You said, lost your virginity at 12 to 2 months.
Ooh, the party line. Yeah, the party line is full of so many stories. Okay.
Hell's Angel, swastika tattoos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff.
There's so much stuff. Crazy life, dude.
Yeah.
So MTV advertised for this party line called The Loop back in the day, and I called, and this one was directed to teenagers, but it led me to calling an adult party line. I met a guy on there, and he's like, if you like...
Describe party line.
Okay, so a party line is almost like a chat room, but it's over the phone. Yeah. So you call, You press a button, you set up a profile with your name. Hi, I'm 13-year-old jailbait. And then you say a little bit about yourself, and then people can inbox you. And then there's also live rooms. So you press button 1 and you go into chat room 1 and everyone's talking.
It's kind of like Omegle these days.
Oh, is that still a thing?
Like, I think people do that. It's like, I don't know, anonymous, but that's with video.
Yeah. Right. But so I started calling and I loved it because I didn't really have friends at school. So this is great. I would just run home and call this party line. And I met my first pedophile, and he's great, and I thought I loved him. But he went by the name Tyler Durden because he was super into Fight Club. So it was like his mailbox was a sample of Fight Club, and this like sexy raspy voice, and And we started talking. He got me to start calling In Spirit. So In Spirit was like the grown-up party line. You got In Spirit. If you got some minutes to blow them with us, right? And like I said, that's where I met pretty much everybody. And everyone had nicknames except me. I was the only one who went by my name. But it was like Hitler, Vampire, number 1, number 2, Satanas, like all these people who would go by these names, right? And
what adult that isn't weird goes on this? It's kids.
So there's factions too. So you had like gypsies that were constantly trying to, what's up, cousin? Like trying to hook up with each other. You have like gangsters trying to hook up with each other, right? And then you have people just blasting their music, like fucking love Jesus and Mary Chain. So
this was like
2000, like 2000, because I started calling when I was 12 because I lost my virginity at 12. Yeah. So I talked to this guy for months before I met him.
Got big plan. Party lines. Yeah, someone else was on the show talked about party lines.
Yeah.
And that's how she met her first pimp, and that's how she got the
Oh shit.
Yeah. It seems like they were not a
No, definitely not. There were a lot of them too. So it would be like I still remember it, 3157779, but then you could change the end number. So it'd be like 3157778 was like the rat. And it was almost exactly like the In Spirit, but there'd just be like slightly different people. But we loved In Spirit. So
that's where the gypsies were.
Exactly. And then you could go to private too. So if you met somebody, press a button and then you could both go to a private room together, whatever. So after months of talking to this guy online, he comes to pick me up. I sneak out of my house at night, which is funny because I didn't even have to sneak in, because then when I came back, I just walked in through the door and Phil saw me and he didn't even care, but whatever. So I snuck out of my house to meet the guys. And as soon as I get into the car, they're both in the front seat. And the guy who's supposedly like, I guess my pseudo boyfriend or something, I don't know what you're supposed to call those, but he goes, "Let's see your tits." So like already I know, like, oh God, he's not my boyfriend. Like I'm in a situation. So like show him my tits, and we get back to the house, and it's in Whittier. And they have a big screen TV, and it's playing Orgasmo. Like Orgasmo has been playing the whole time that they went to pick me up and get there. And I go back to Tyler. It turns out his name is Ruben. But I go back to Tyler Durden's bedroom, and he puts on Michael Jackson's Thriller video, like the DVD, whatever. And he shows me this picture of a little girl, which is his daughter. I didn't know he had a daughter. He shows me this picture of this little girl in the frame, and this is my daughter, Hope. And I said, oh. And he goes, yeah, her mom's name is Faith. That's my girlfriend. And I said, oh. He goes, yeah, she got sent away, foster home or something, but she got sent away after she got pregnant. But when she comes back, we're going to be together. I said, oh, okay. And then he grabs me and starts making out with me. And I just freeze. You know how they fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? It just froze up. And I start to make sounds. And he goes, no, my neighbors are going to hear you. They know Faith. And he puts his hand on my mouth hard and like grips my mouth. And proceeds to have like very violent sex with me. And it's rapey, but I wouldn't say it was rape because I didn't fight back. I was just heavily dissociated. And then afterwards he goes, okay, now go fuck my cousin. And tears welled up in my eyes. And I said, I was a virgin. I love you. I thought he was my boyfriend, you know? So I said, please don't make me do this. And he's like, if you don't go in there and fuck my cousin, I'm gonna throw you in the middle of the street, naked. And you're gonna have to find your way back home. So I go into his cousin's room. He has this Shakira poster on his closet. Never forget that. He's old, like Ruben or whatever is in his 20s, and he looks so much like with his Guy Pearce. He looked so much like Guy Pearce. Not that Guy Pearce is cute, but that's what he looked like. The cousin was just this big, bloated, bald, liver-lipped dude. And yeah. And I begged him too. I said, please don't make me do this. I was a virgin before this. I just want to go home. And he was like, I could tell he felt bad, but not bad enough, because he was like, all right, just suck my dick. And he took out his dick, and I asked him to put a condom on. I said, please, put a condom on. And he pulled out this green, it was a green condom. I remember it was just so weird looking. But yeah, I ended up sucking his dick, and then they both laughed. I came outside, and Tyler or Ruben or whoever the fuck was smoking, and he handed me a cigarette, and I didn't know how to smoke, and I choked. And he laughed. And he handed me the rest of the pack of cigarettes, and he's like, well, you have this many left to figure out how. And they drove me home. And the whole time they were driving me home, they were making fun of me. They were making fun of my bush. And I remember Tyler saying oh, it just looks like she has Macy Gray between her legs. Are you sure you were a virgin? Because your pussy's pretty loose. And just saying really fucked up things. And then they dropped me off at my house, and I checked the door, and it was locked. I had left it open, but I guess Phil had come around and locked it. So I banged on the door. He was dead drunk. It was 4 a.m. He didn't even ask me where I'd been. He just let me in. And I went to school the next day. And I started smoking those cigarettes.
That's one of the saddest things I've ever heard in my life. That's horrible. I'm just I can't believe that happened to you. And that person is evil. That. I can't even imagine what that does to somebody. And the thing is, you're such a sweet person, I can tell. And it's amazing that you've been able to keep that about yourself. And it's so sad that these things happen to the type of person that you feel least deserves it, or least would be able to handle it. But you're here. You've handled it. But
I think
that's unbelievable.
I think if there's one thing that I never want to lose, it's that joy and that wonder for life. And as corny as it maybe sounds, it really has given me a depth of appreciation for the good things. I really do genuinely feel I taste things more deeply. I see colors more vividly because I've been able to process things on that other side of my range of feeling and experience is pretty broad, and it wasn't always like that. I numbed out for a long time. Enter drugs. There were just a lot of things that I didn't want to feel and think about, a lot of shame because I felt I put myself in that situation. And who do you even tell after something like that? You did it to yourself, right? At least that's how I felt for a long time. It definitely didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel like anything had been done.
Did you go to school that next day?
Yeah.
The whole day you didn't? cut out?
No, I actually remember making jokes and acting like just goofy. Like I completely dissociated from what happened. And I think that happened, that particular thing, you know, it held me in good stead, or maybe not, for a long time, was just being able to just sort of power on and
By the way, I have some,
act like nothing happened. Yeah, oh sure, tissue, that'd be great, yeah. No, I'll just wipe my boogers all over myself, why not?
Yeah, this is, even though it's on the ground, this part isn't on the ground.
Thank you so much. But yeah, you know, I have
Did you keep going on that?
Yes, I did, and I met another guy, another dude.
It's so crazy that like you end up losing your virginity to another pedophile. Was your dad was already molesting you at that point, probably?
Yeah, but my dad, but the incident in San Francisco actually happened after that, so it was like, you know, that was I guess at least I didn't lose my virginity to my dad. But yeah, be thankful for the small things. Oh yeah, because I also think about things like when you're a child, right? You don't know wrong touch from, you know, you just know you're being held. I used to sleep in his bed a lot. I used to sleep in his bed all the time when I was little, but I don't remember anything weird. But then I wouldn't know it was weird because it was normal to me when I was a child. So how would I know if cuddles are more than cuddle? Like it wouldn't even register enough to be a memory, I don't think. But I continued to go on the party line after that. I had made friends. And so there was another friend, his name was Daniel. And he went by Starman, AKA Squall, AKA so many other things. Everyone had like 5 different nicknames. But he was like the coolest ever in my mind. And he was into really awesome music. Like I remember his mailbox was Ono Soul, the Thurston Moore song. Dun, 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 dun. And I was like, what is that band? He says, Thurston Moore, it's Sonic Youth. And I was 12. What the fuck did I know about Sonic Youth or Pavement or Jesus and Mary Chain or any of the Joy Division or any of those bands? But like these 20-something-year-old guys came into my life and they became my friends. And I used to every single night go on the party line and just listen to them and talk to them. They'd make fun of me because they knew I was younger, but they didn't know how much younger. I said I was 16. But they would always punk me for being the youngest one. Get out of here, Sam. But I really liked them. And Daniel lived in Highland Park too. So one day we arranged to meet each other. And I went to the library and he was sitting there in the back row. He was very overweight and dark, and he had this long frizzy black ponytail, and he had like a little rubber band like every quarter-inch down the ponytail all the way down to his back, and he had this like black leather jacket and a backpack that was all written on with white out, like the names of the bands that he was into. And I sat down and he gave me all this music, like all these CDs and VHS tapes that he dubbed. And so that was our relationship for a while. It was like he was sort of my phone boyfriend because we liked each other. We definitely liked each other. But he was scared of me because he knew I was an underage girl. So he wasn't like, I think he was really scared of going to jail, and he was really scared of getting in trouble. So in that particular situation, I was the big time aggressor. I was definitely like, why don't you come see me? Let's hang out. And you get away, Samantha, you're gonna get me in trouble, you know? And so for the longest time, we would just exchange music, talk on the phone. And then one day, he and his friend, Troy, went to the Eagle Plaza, and they invited me and my friend, Stephanie, to meet them there. They had a big gallon, like a jug of vodka in their backpack. And we poured it into these Sprite bottles. And we were just walking around the York Plaza, walking around where the frogs used to be. It was a long time ago. And I remember I just kept drinking more and more. Like I kept chugging it. And the last thing I remember is looking at the fountains and the frogs. And then I woke up in a hospital bed. And I had gotten alcohol poisoning, I guess. I don't remember what happened, but I was drinking, and then I started lifting up my skirt and acting crazy, and they were trying to calm me down. They told me to sit down, and then I laid down, but I laid down and like I kept opening my legs, and they were trying to control me, but the cops ended up coming. Like my friends were trying to get a handle on me, but I was making a big spectacle of myself, so the cops ended up showing up. And I had alcohol poisoning. They pumped my stomach. I woke up with a catheter inside of me, and I had pierced my own nipples, and I used to cut myself and burn myself. So when they pumped my stomach and took me in the ambulance, they saw all the cuts all over my body. They took out my nipple rings, and I had carved that guy's name into my leg. Yeah, so they knew who he was. They knew he had given me the alcohol, and it was over. We still talk to each other, but he went to jail. Yeah, he got charged for giving me the alcohol, and I went home and like hid all of his. I cut holes in the lining of my jacket, and I hid his love letters and his mixtapes in my jacket so no one could find them. And I had a lock of his hair, and I had a lock of his hair. I used to save everything from the receipts to the when we would drink. I would save like the labels off of the Sprite bottle. I put it all in my little notebook. I was like, oh, so special, my boyfriend.
How many other abusers were there?
Oh shit. Then I ended up kind of hanging out with his friend, but I wouldn't I think that's it. I mean, aside from, you've talked about child abusers. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And then your relationship with alcohol, that sort of began like a bad relationship.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of funny too, because I still absolutely, I don't drink, but I love alcohol, and I'll always have to say that, it was my best friend and my ally, and it was like me and the bottle against the world, and it's a really hard thing to let go of. It was easy to drink as a teenager, actually, especially in my neighborhood. There's a little liquor store called Azteca. It recently sold because Highland Park's super gentrified now. It's like, but there were these two brothers, and they used to sell alcohol to underage kids. If you were a girl, you had to hug them. So you would go, you'd bring your backpack, you'd grab your booze, and you'd bring it around to the side of the counter, and then they would hug you, and then you'd put it in your backpack, and they'd still charge you 50 cents more. Like, they just still put an extra, I guess because they're incurring the risk. But yeah, so we could just go into the liquor store literally down the street from my house and buy as much booze as we want. We'd buy pints of vodka, and I was drunk from age 12 until I started trying to get pregnant with my son, so 27. So from 12 to 27, I was just a fucking raging alcoholic. And I would say, that's a little bit of an exaggeration maybe, because 12 to 14, I was drinking like a kid, right? Getting drunk because I didn't know how to handle my liquor. But how often do you really get super wasted? But after I dropped out of school in the 9th grade, I was drinking every day. I got a job as a dishwasher, and I would just get wasted in the back, and I was drunk every single day. But
I've always thought about that lifestyle as something I just can't. I wouldn't be able to do it physically, like getting drunk that often. Like I would be so exhausted after doing that for a week that I would just naturally not want to do it anymore. But
I think your body adjusts in some way.
Your body probably adjusts, but you're doing it because your demons were so like torturing you that you were using it as like a Band-Aid.
It's only been recently that I've actually stopped doing that. It was like I said, I quit drinking before I got pregnant, and I was afraid to even touch a drop of fucking red wine because I know what a bad alcoholic I am. So I was terrified of alcohol the whole time I was pregnant, and when I was breastfeeding, and then after my marriage fell apart and my son was like a year and a half, that's when I started drinking again, and that was really, it was a it was really dark time in my life. I justified it to myself by saying, oh, I only drink at night when all of my responsibilities are over with. It was tearing me apart. And to be compartmentalized like that, you know, they say that higher functioning people, it's you know, you can make it through the day, but at the end of the day, everything comes out. And it felt terrible to have this double life where, you know, during the day I'm there with my son, I'm watching him take his steps and learning to talk and just being completely enveloped in that. I had wanted that so badly. I'd wanted the family. When I was pregnant, it felt like a fairy tale. I thought, wow, I never thought that I would make it to 18, let alone, you know, get married and have a kid. It was not the kind of life that I'd ever imagined for myself. So when that fell apart, it was pretty devastating. And the way that it fell apart was pretty hard. But I think that what they say about drinking is true. I went to AA for the longest time. AA didn't work for me. They say it works if you work it, but I also think that there are different paths for different people, and AA wasn't my path. But there are a lot of like really good one-liners in AA, and one of them was like, "Oh, alcohol is it's like not your drinking, it's your thinking, right? It's a disease of the thoughts," and I definitely could see that in how my thoughts would drive me over and over again to that like oblivion and that I guess self-soothing or self-medicating and escaping and numbing out the pain, and it becomes cyclical. Like any kind of addiction, you use to numb the pain, but then the things that you do while you're using or just the addiction itself creates more pain that you have to numb yourself from, and it just is a never-ending thing. And so they say that the antidote is to allow yourself to feel the full breadth of your feelings, you know, not be scared of feelings and feel that you need to shut them down when they show up. You can have them inform you. Oh, anger, hi. Anger, you're my friend. What do you have to tell me today? Oh, sadness, you're cool too. Like, what do you have to teach me today? No, I don't have to shoo you away. You're not going to destroy me. But the thing is that when the feelings come on, and they talk about, you know, in therapy, they talk about emotional flashbacks and how things can happen in life that will be, people say, triggered or fragilized, or things that take you back to that core content, that core wounding. And that's a lot of the time when people want to drink. Of course, they need to celebrate, or because you want to be normal, or because there's an event. But also, a lot of the time, you know, that pathological, addictive kind of drinking comes from this inability to be with your thoughts, or this need to like shut down and compartmentalize.
You have those flashbacks a lot?
It's gotten a lot better. It's gotten so much better because I'm in therapy. But it happens. It happened a lot in my last relationship because it was a pretty toxic and abusive relationship. I would say like both ways, you know. I was not in a good place. I wasn't my best self, but I definitely know that the person that I was dating was heavily narcissistically abusive, and I don't like to just throw that term around, you know, and pathologize and, you know, like, no, but this person was heavily narcissistically abusive and a pathological liar, and it brought about a lot of, it reminded me a lot of my childhood. And I also felt like that was a person that really used my childhood to get into my head and to deconstruct me for weaknesses.
Well, just think about the men, like the man you lost your virginity to, how cruel he was to you. Just like so cruel. And it's like, it's hard for you to not keep choosing relationships that give you that familiar dynamic of, you know, you being beneath your partner, you know?
Yeah, that's why I'm not dating, actually, because I told myself that I don't know what's good for me at this point, and I'm not the person that I would like to be to attract the person that I want to be with. So
that's good. I feel like you need to work on that, because I feel like you're going to be fated to keep picking the wrong partner over and over again.
Yeah, it is. They call it repetition compulsion. And that's absolutely what it is. You keep playing out these dynamics until you get it, right? And this time I feel,
Can you describe that a little bit deeper? It's like you're trying to fix the past almost, right?
Right. It's this, you're reenacting the same dynamic, only this time you're hoping that there'll be a different outcome because you, right? And but the thing is, you have to take all of that energy and put it back into yourself, or I have to take all of that energy and put it into myself, as opposed to trying to heal a toxic relationship or fix somebody else, or be the one who gives them faith in the goodness of life, or whatever. A lot of times it's such a cliche, but it is true that we think that we can save ourselves by rescuing other people, and we pick these wounded people and continue to give and give of ourselves, hoping that they'll reciprocate and that they'll come and do the same for us. But it doesn't happen that way. You kiss the toad thinking that he's going to become a prince, but you just end up with warts, right? He'll be like, no, you gave it to me.
So who's the worst? This guy, the pedophile boyfriend. Whose boyfriend was the worst? Was there another one?
Yeah, I mean, there have been boyfriends. Some of them were better than others. They weren't all abusive, and that's an interesting part, right? Is that you wonder, because I think about my last relationship, right? My therapist asked me, write a list of the things that you want in somebody, and how many of those things, how much of that criteria did this person meet? Almost none of it. Sometimes what we want and what we think we like can be more important than what we even know we deeply need. And so there were people who were not abusive, and at that point in my life, I probably was bored by them or not attracted. They talk about that, and I read this book, Human Magnet Syndrome, but they talk about how people sort of, those people who are selfless, or to a certain extent will magnetize people who are selfish to the same degree, until you kind of I want to tell my story too. You don't even know how bad my uncle was.
Let's pause, and I'm gonna shake that tree. You're saying making friends?
Oh yeah, I wasn't not so great at making friends. I was actually pretty awkward and overweight and picked on in elementary school and into junior high, but that started to get a little bit better. Around that time, I got super into Wicca, like any fucking young teenage girl who probably watched The Craft on TV too many times. But I was really into it. So I had my little mirror book where I'd write my spells and, what the colors of the candles meant and the phases of the moon. And there was a girl in one of my classes who said, hey, there's these girls who also practice Wicca, and they have a little coven that meets by the handball court. You'd probably really like them. So I went over there, and they were a year older than me. They were really cool. This is when Nader was running for president, so they were all Green Party and Nader's the shit, and into anime, and they were just the nerd girlfriends of my dreams, right? And so they became my close friends, and we would meet together, and we'd have these little makeshift coven meetings. They were so cringy. We all had nicknames Morgana, and one of the girls was named Shakalaka Moomba, and I'm not kidding.
Cute though.
It is. And so for Halloween, we had our little ritual, right? And it was just like a class party. I mean, we had Oreos and chips and soda. We're all sitting there doing our little mumbo jumbo. And in the middle of it, one of the girls stands up and she goes, I can't do any of this shit anymore. I'm an atheist, and walks off. And I'm like, that's my new best friend. And so from there, we broke off from them and we became inseparable. Talk about a love story between friends. Oh my God, it was everything. She was the coolest. We were pretty much the same height. We wore the same size shoes. We wore the same size clothes. It was we're two little birds. And she's the one who smoked weed with me for the first time. She had already started smoking pot, so I remember the day after school that we were gonna go smoke weed for the first time. I kept smelling her sweater, oh, that's what weed smells like. I was so excited, and Yeah, we had like tons of good times. We used to go to, there's this video store, you'd have loved it. There's this video store in Hollywood. Back then it was called Mondo Video a Go-Go. But it was like, it was on Vermont at the time, but then they got petitioned because it was too lewd. Like the people like signed petitions to get them moved over to Heliotrope, and then it died. But they used to have all kinds of, like, they had Truffaut next to like freeway shootings, you know, that they had recorded off a TV. Yeah, and then they had like an old cardboard poster of Leave It to Beaver, but they changed it to say Eat Beaver, and they had all the heads decapitated on the white picket. But this was like, and they would give you a card that said "In loving memory of" and your name, and then the back, like mine had Ron Jeremy with grapes over his nuts. So we would go there and like,
you know, near here called Wacko. It kind of reminds me of it, but that's a bookstore.
Oh yeah, Soap Plant. I love that place.
That place is great.
It's great, yeah. But this is like a little skeevy video store. We used to go there and like rent, like, you know, like White Dog and stuff, you know, like, and we had great time. We go to backyard gigs. We were like always together. Yeah. But my life was crazy, and and you know, all the drugs. Like basically, I ended up getting heavily into meth and then into heroin. That's a story all on its own. Basically, I was directing a school play. It was like one night of one act. I was doing this like Eric Bogosian play, and the girl who was supposed to be my lead actress, we went back to her house to run lines, and you wouldn't believe it, she had a whole bag of crystal in her teddy bear, like big shards in her teddy bear. And I remember her breaking up lines and us snorting them, and then she put them in little pills. She like took apart gel caps and like shoved into pills, and we downed them with Dr. Pepper. And I remember like doing figure eights on her carpet and thinking like I knew everything and finally understood everything, and like I loved meth, and I lost the childhood weight, and like I was writing a lot and doing tons of collages and just like getting more and more tweaked out, like really tweaked out. At first it was cool because I felt like I had tons of ideas and I was super productive, but like I started to get very paranoid. I started to get very I'm veering off. I'm sorry, you can cut through all this shit. But anyway.
We do have to like be mindful of the plane because it's gonna suck if I go through and it's like.
Yeah, the loud noise and shit.
Fine now.
So anyway, I ended up getting super into meth, and then I go to rehab for the meth and get on heroin. That's another story. But I start shooting heroin, and my best friend and I, she stays sober for a while, and my life is falling apart. I mean, I end up on the streets, I overdose, like shit's fucking super crazy. And the whole time she's in school, she's getting A's and B's, she's in AP classes, like her family doesn't even know she smokes weed. She's doing awesome. I'm like, oh, Sam's in the homeless shelter this week. Oh, like Sam's in rehab this week. She'd come to visit me, and she was yeah. So she was more than a friend. She was the only person that knew what was going on in my house. The only person who really knew me, that had ever really known me, knew what my dad was about, knew what my life was really like. And she was also really fucking funny and smart and down to earth and creative. And anyway, she had this boyfriend she was super in love with, and they broke up. He had a lot of issues. He had actually been molested, abducted and molested when he was younger. So he had sexual issues. They couldn't be intimate. It got in the way of things. She was devastated. And she decided that she wanted to learn how to shoot up. I didn't think twice about teaching her. The guy who taught me just taught me, and I thought it was great, and I loved it. It was actually way more manageable for me than anything else. It was more manageable than speed. It was definitely more manageable than alcohol. I felt like, the strange thing about it was like I felt like I had control over heroin, which is just like complete illusion, but I really felt that I did. So I didn't even worry about it when I taught her how to score. We'd go downtown. kind of by Pershing Square on 5th and Hill. And I don't know if you know this, but like there's these guys who will walk around, they hold a briefcase or they hold like a newspaper like this, and they'll just walk around the corner, and you could like spot them if you walk around a couple times, and then you go Chiba or like Outfits. I remember the first time I went out there, because they call needles Outfits. I remember the first time I went out there, I was so nervous. I was like, you guys have any uniforms? They're like, Outfits, idiot. Just fucking be addicted to drugs, right? But like, so I taught her how to score. We went downtown, and they spit out the little balloons in your hand, and she was only using for about a week. And I was out for breakfast with Phil, my dad, and he clinks glasses with me. Like he'd gotten a raise at work, and he clinked, I don't know how, but he clinked glasses with me. And immediately I had like this flip book in front of my eyes. Like I saw all these images really, really quickly. And I didn't know what it was. It was beyond deja vu. It was like somebody had played a tape for me, but like 10 times fast. And I got woozy. And I was like, whoa, something's wrong. And I went to the bathroom, and I like tried to reorient myself, but I was panicking really bad. I mean, I did drugs, so I'm like, maybe I'm just tripping from the drugs, but it was really strong. I couldn't even finish my meal. I said, let's go. I didn't want to sit there. I didn't want to play. I said, we got to go home. So when we get to the house, the phone is ringing off the hook. We're unlocking the door, it's ringing. We get there, it's ringing. It must have rang like 10, 15 times by the time we drove up the driveway into the house. And Phil answers the phone. I just hear my mother screaming. I guess my best friend Stephanie's mom had called her. They found her that morning. They'd gone to wake her up. It was already 12. They thought she was sleeping in. They're like, good morning, sunshine. And they opened the door. She'd been dead for hours. She was cold completely. But I didn't believe it. I completely didn't believe it. Like, you know how they say the stages of grief, like denial, like I didn't believe it. I thought they were playing a trick on me. I thought that they were trying to get me sober, because she had recently come to visit me in a homeless shelter. I had just gotten back home after overdosing. And so I thought, this is what they're doing. They're trying to scare me straight. I know it. She's going to be there. First I was screaming hysterically, and then as we were driving over there, I was like laughing to myself, like, no, there's no way. And then of course we got there, and she was gone. Her whole family was there to say goodbye. And the funny part about this, or the little because we used to write each other letters a lot, and she'd written a letter about what she wanted when she died, and she said, I don't want anybody crying, I want them to play the germs, and I want people to be fucking happy, and so I guess when they went back into her room and they dumped out her purse, she had this deck of cards that I bought her that was like naked ladies, like all these like BBWs, but they were BBWs. And so when they poured out her purse to see what was in there, all the naked lady cards fell out all over the bed and everything. So it was like a little glimmer of like, fuck, but I was really scared. And when they wheeled her out, she looked so tiny on the gurney, and I couldn't believe it. We all got to like touch her before they wheeled her out, and they put her in the wagon, and her mom went crazy. She said, not my baby. She ran down the street after the wagon, like they had to like grab her and bring her back. But it was the reason why I stopped doing heroin. That's how I quit, actually. And her funeral was even like crazy. Her uncle got mad because her boyfriend that she'd broken up with, he tried to pin an Addicts pin on her lapel. Her favorite band was the Addicts. And her uncle got pissed and was like, how dare you put that on her lapel when she died of a heroin overdose? They're fucking insensitive. And her boyfriend was like, you don't even know who she was. That was her favorite band. And there's practically a fucking fist fight. And the moon was blood red. I remember coming back from the wake. It was huge and blood red. There's always been like weird little signs around her death that night.
What do you think that moment in the restaurant was? You clinked glasses with your dad.
I feel like it was her spirit. It was some connection that we had. It was like her and me, like me knowing or something. You know how they say time isn't linear? Yeah. Like I feel like in some way at that moment, like I don't know, like it all came to me at once. Yeah. And I don't dream about her. But the night that she died, I had this, I don't dream about her, but the night that she died, I had a dream that we were laying in bed together, and there was, you know, those old radios where it's like between stations and it's like, there's a killer on the loose, there's a madman, lock your windows and your doors, ladies and gentlemen, right? So there's this announcers, lock your windows, escaped a madman, and I said, oh, I should get up and lock the windows. And she wrapped her arms around me and she said, no, don't worry, nothing's gonna hurt us. And I like cuddled up really close to her and I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too. And it was interesting because the night before she died, I had actually thought I was dying. That night, the day before, we had gone to see Fahrenheit 9/11. And I couldn't sit through it because I kept having these fucking panic attacks. And I told her, I think I'm gonna die. I think I'm gonna die. And she said, don't be silly, Sam. You're not gonna die. I said, I feel like if I go to sleep, I'm gonna die. If I close my eyes and I stop willing myself awake, I'll die. She said, that's silly. Only 1 in a million people die in their sleep. Well, she ended up dying that night. And that was the only dream that I've had about her. I used to just wish, oh God, like, I just wanna see her. I just wanna see her. Like, I wish I could just dream about her. And 2 weeks ago, I went to the cemetery, and I hate to be the sad bastard crying at my friend's fucking gravesite. I really, like, I hate the, you know, like every time I go to, she's like in this mausoleum, and I hate going to that wall because it's like I face my own questions about like why is she gone? Like, why did I get a second chance and she didn't? Like, does she hate me? And so like I'm always trying to pump myself up, like, oh, just talk about your day, tell her a joke, you know, like work on your type 5. So I like walk up to the mausoleum and I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, how are you? I'm doing good. Like, I'm not drinking. I bet you're proud. You know how hard that is for me. Like, I am smoking way too much weed though. It's like, it's pretty much your fault because you're the one who got me into weed, right? And then I stopped. And I was like, well, I'm the one who got you into heroin. And I guess that's kind of my fault, right? And I always wonder, like, does she hate me? Does she blame me? Like, I remember when I got the phone call, I kept screaming, like, it should be me. It should be me. Like, why is she gone? And so it's like, do you hate me? Do you blame me? And I heard this tap. And I was like, oh man, you do hate me, huh? It's like, fuck, like, I say, do you hate me? And I hear like, and I'm like, fucking, like, I'll leave now, right? And I just hear like, and I look up and there's this balloon that's in like somebody else's mausoleum. It's this little heart balloon and it says, I love you. And I don't know if that was just a coincidence or something, but it really
Careful
like,
with the mic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that was a coincidence or something, but it really meant the world to me. And sometimes I go there and the wind just kicks up so like crazy when I'm talking to her that I don't know if I'm like lying to myself by believing that there's something more, but like I have to believe that. Like I have to believe.
Why do you feel like you have to believe that?
Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Like I can't understand like how somebody that beautiful could be gone so young and that there's nothing more after this. Like, I don't know, even if it's against like all reason or if it's completely emotional,
but don't you
illogical.
feel like she made her mark on you in a positive way and that was what her gift to the world was, and like her life wasn't like in vain?
I definitely don't think her life was in vain, but it's hard not to feel egotistical and assuming that her role was to wake me up or something that just, and I told myself for the longest time, oh, I'm going to live for both of us and everything that I do is going to be for you and for me. But I was hard enough even just to do something for myself a lot of the times. And I would feel so guilty. Every time I would try to get sober and stop drinking, and I would fail. And it was just like a lot of weight to carry. And so I think that if there was anything that I, of her that I took on, might be her sense of humor, her sweetness, the way that she cared about things other than herself and really thought about the world. Like, she's the only person that I knew at that age who talked about history and like knew what had happened in other places in the world at other times other than right fucking now. She actually cared. So I don't know. I mean, I have her name tattooed on me.
Right. When did you get that?
Right after she died. My cousin, he had a friend who was an elevator operator and lived right down the street from my house. But he actually gave me my first tattoo when I was 13, on my 13th birthday. And he said, is it hurting you? I said, no, it feels good. He goes, oh God, you're going to be covered. I just know it. And I went back to him for this one. I drew it myself and got it done, I think a couple days later. But
have you had anyone else close to you die?
Yeah, my grandma passed away. My grandpa passed away. And then my other grandfather, but my grandfather who I call my grandparents mom and dad. So my grandma that I live with right now, I call her mom. And then my grandfather, I call him dad. I've called him mom and dad my whole life. But my, was another.
You call your dad Phil?
I call my dad Phil. Another knocking phenomenon.
You've always called him Phil?
No, I used to have like nicknames for him. Like, I never really called him dad, and I never felt comfortable calling him dad. Like, it was just never our dynamic, But no, I call him Phil now. There's just no way I feel comfortable calling him my dad. But what are we talking about as far as that goes?
We're talking about, have you had other people die? And I'm curious if you try to find meaning in their death in the same way.
I think it's a lot easier. It was a lot easier. Oh, well, actually, my friend Farmer Dave was the most recent person, because I was going to say my grandparents died, but grandparents die. Like, that's what they do. Like, you expect them to die. It's not like it's not hard. And I grieved really hard for my grandfather because I loved him very much. But it was a different kind of grief. It made sense. When Steph died, it didn't make sense. And when my friend Farmer Dave died, it didn't make sense. And excuse me just a second. I met my friend Farmer Dave when I was working at this little health food store in Pasadena, and we worked the food line together. He was a big time drunk, and so was I. And we bonded over that. We used to drink quite a bit. We'd go to the round table next door. We'd order pitchers, but he was one of the few guy friends that I'd had in my life that there were never any vibes either way. It was like he was a big brother. But it was also like he was asexual a little bit too, because his last name was Vestal. He was 27 years old, and he was like, I'm a Vestal virgin, He was saving himself for the girl that he was going to marry. He really thought about things that way. He was very pure, sweethearted. He's the kind of guy who you would run into him and he would say sorry, And I remember one time one of our friends said, Dave, you're always apologizing for yourself. He goes, oh, really? Sorry. And it was just, but he was so sweet and such a caretaker. And so his mom was quadriplegic, and he used to have to take care of her when he was young. And so I think he just had, he didn't know how to care for himself. He put everybody else first. He's always falling in love with the wrong kind of girl. And, we were together pretty much every single day because we worked together. So when we come back to my house, and it was brother and sister style, constantly together. And then I moved to Texas.
It kind of reminds me of you.
How so?
Well, you, him putting other people first, and I feel like you do the same thing.
I'm trying to be more balanced in that now, and just like.
But do you think that was part of your bond? Is that you feel like you had like similar wounds, maybe?
Oh yeah, that was. I mean, I definitely think that we bonded from a place of wounding. You know, I think a lot of the really good friends that I've had throughout my life, that there's been that whatever backstory. That's also something I was criticized for. I had a boyfriend that I dated saying like, "Oh, you just go for anyone with a backstory." It's like, you know, just shut up. You don't know them. But yeah, I definitely. I mean, we related so hard. I mean, who do you drink with for that many hours, like listening to albums, getting stoned, talking about your whole lives, and like never make out with? And it never even like almost happens. You're just like, all right, dude, I'm going to sleep, you know? And so I moved to Texas, and at that point he moved to Hawaii. He was a guerrilla gardener. That's why they called him Farmer Dave. He would plant gardens in like abandoned lots all throughout the city, and he'd make like this crappy little place look beautiful with like so little resources. Total magician like that. He was really into permaculture too. So he'd like transform little areas. So, oh, we need water here. Like, look, it feeds over here. And he'd geek out on stuff like that. He's really into plants, really into nature. So he met this girl, he went to Hawaii, he was working on this permaculture farm, and I guess they broke up, and that was just really devastating for him. And he came back to Los Angeles, moved in with his sister, and I forgot to mention that one of the big reasons that we bonded was because we were both ex-heroin addicts. We were both heavy drinkers that used to use heroin. And when he moved back to Los Angeles, he started shooting up again. So I lost contact with him for a few years, and then I got pregnant with my son, and I ran into him again, and he was like pushing a shopping cart on the street, homeless. He didn't want to touch me or hug me because he said he had bad juju and he didn't want to pass it on to my baby. He said he was like gonna go up north with his spirit family and get right. He's like, yeah, this is the time. I'm gonna kick this time. And I later heard from another friend who was like squatting at the same place that he was really, really bad, and that he had attempted suicide because he said, I've tried to quit so many times and I can't. Like, this is just who I am. Like, and I understand that feeling so much when you want to be clean so badly and you keep failing. It's like, it's a hopeless feeling. And I don't think that he killed himself, but he overdosed. And they found him in a garage a couple days after he passed. And I think about that a lot too. You know, as far as the beautiful people that I've known, and you know, it's not just to sing their praises because they're dead and everyone becomes like, you know, 50% more altruistic post-mortem, like, oh shit, like now you're saying you've been canonized. Like, no, but they genuinely, this is not revisionist history. They were people that touched my life when they were alive. And
they did it.
Yeah.
That was their gift. That was their gift to you.
Yeah, like, you know, to be a guerrilla gardener, right? But with people, like you take the deserted wasteland that's inside of somebody and you're like, wow, things can grow here. Like, it's a big deal.
Wow. It's really sad.
But life is like, I feel like a lot of things exist in that. I'm gonna be like the cryingest person. I was the littest person, now I'm the cryingest person. What the fuck? Ugh! Fuck! Gotta know when to quit. But I think it's just so bittersweet. Like, it all runs into, it's like when you're tripping on shrooms and you're like, oh, am I crying because it's so beautiful, or because it's sad, or because it's sadly beautiful or beautifully sad? That's like the best part, is it's so bittersweet, and you can't, it's like a tapestry that's interwoven. Like, you can't, the victories and the defeats and the pain and the pleasure, it's all knit together, and you can't pull one string without losing the whole thing. So it's like, I'm not You know, I can't claim to know like how it was constructed, but I sure know that I don't want to pull on a string and end up with a fucking hole in my sweater, you know?
Yeah. Just a good way to put it.
Yeah. I don't know. I recently watched Butterfly Effect with a friend of mine, and I was like,
Is that a line in that?
No. But it's basically, I felt like that whole thing was a storytelling vehicle for how we want to go back in time. Yeah. Because, you know, whatever, but don't pick apart the science, but basically this dude can like travel. You know, okay, so yeah. So I feel like, but that's just basically what we all do in our minds, right? We think, oh, if I could only go back and change this, that, you know, maybe it'd make it worse, right? So it's like, yeah, you don't really even need the fact that he can travel back. I mean, I guess you kind of do, but you know, that's really what it is. It's an object lesson, right? Like you think you can go back and only if I'd done this or hadn't done that, but you don't know. So and I know I'm not wise enough to be able to see the ripple effect of things, so I can't pick anything in my life and say I wish this had or hadn't happened. I just try and accept things for what they are. You know, make what I can of the raw materials.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it going forward.
It's all you can.
Do you think that the attaching meaning to signs, especially with the first friend that died, is made it harder for you in some ways?
Sometimes I think that attaching too much meaning or looking for signs can get in the way of just living what you already know. Yeah. Like I recently told my therapist, how do I get more insight? Like, how do I know that what I'm seeing clearly, and how can I be sure? And she said, in my opinion, you don't have a problem with insight. Your insight is great. It's your actions, you know, it's living what you know. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of us is we know, and it's being able to practically apply what we know and not just live in our heads. You know, I can tell you the story of how my friend died and how it hurt me and what it taught me, but if my life doesn't reflect those lessons, then where is the meaning? You know, I guess in that sense, you kind of have to infuse those memories with the meaning.
To anyone watching the full interview, we're going to have to cut because the helicopter over us is too loud, but we're going to bring you back. All right, that's it. We got to go. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Good night.